Welcome to the Just Ingredients podcast. I'm Cara Lynn, and here we talk all things nourishing to the mind, body, and soul. This is a place where you can find just good ingredients to life. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today, I have a Just Ingredients podcast favorite. It is Sara-Chana, who you guys know, a master herbalist, classical homeopath, and board-certified lactation consultant with over 30 years of experience. Known for blending alternative medicine with conventional treatment, Sara-Chana helps individuals feel empowered to make informed health choices. Sara-Chana also runs a thriving pediatric and women's health clinic in Brooklyn, New York, and teaches herbal and homeopathic medicine to students globally. In her personal life, she is a proud mother of 7, and I have loved having you on the show a few times now, so welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. When you said 30 years, I was like, oh my gosh, is that aging me? But you know what's fascinating is Dr. Brazeltine did MRI scans of women throughout their years. And as we age, the part of our brain that is responsible for intuitive decisions actually grows as you age. So when you first said it, I went, oh my gosh. And then I was like, oh no, this is perfect. So I want
love
everyone
it.
out there to know that that's what's happening to their brain.
I needed that because as I age, I'm like, oh, let's find the benefits, not the cons. So thank you for sharing that. Before we begin, like I said, you've been on multiple podcast shows here, and the audience has loved listening to you. And so maybe for those that might be new, will you just tell a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. So I'm a mother of 7 children, as you said, 5 boys and 2 girls. And when I was in university, I had did a couple semesters at Oxford University, and my allergies got really bad. And I didn't bring any of my allergy medicine. You didn't think about it. And so I ended up going into a health food store using some herbal products, and my allergies just got so much better. So instead of studying Shakespeare at Oxford University, which is what I was there for, I spent most of my time in the library looking up botanical plant-based medicine. So I want everyone to know out there that I've done a 5-year program in classical homeopathy with 500 clinical hours. I did a 3-year herbal apprentice program with more than 500 clinical hours. So when we talk today, I really understand the scientific research of how plant-based medicines work in our body.
I love it. Well, I'm so excited for today's topic because it's going to be about teenagers' health and their hormone health and their moodiness. And having teenagers myself, I can't wait to ask you so many questions. And so I'm curious, though, what got you into the herbal medicines for teens and hormone health?
So I first became a lactation consultant, and I'm proud to say that I've helped over 45,000 babies breastfeed. But when I have my hour-and-a-half consult, imagine, you see your midwife, you see your doctor maybe for 7 minutes. My consultations are never under an hour and a half. So the women and I became very close. They'd ask a lot of personal questions, and a lot of them would say, I'm terrified about the teens and/or I had a baby 12 years later and I have this teenager at home. So I started discussing hormones with my clients. And before I knew it, there were hundreds and hundreds of teenage girls and boys whose parents were like literally like dropping them off on my door and running away, right? Because they're like, I can't handle this. So then I did a lot of research and like, we're supposed to have these hormonal surges. So it's normal, normal, normal. But the question is, how do we stay sane with these normal influx of all these hormones? So it's hard. It's hard. And some teens will cry a lot. Some will get angry. Some will want to be independent but close to you. Some are really afraid to, take that step into the world. So there's so much going on these days. And then with the internet, there's so much misinformation also, which makes it more confusing. So what I like to tell parents is that offering herbal medicine to your teens is like holding their hand walking down a dark scary alley, because it's very intimidating for boys to get these surges of testosterone and these girls to get these overwhelming floods of estrogen. So when we help hold their hand, they will have a better chance at navigating the changes that they're going through. And each teenager is going to go through it in a completely different way.
I'm curious though, because we do have these hormonal surges and changes, but do you think that they're more intense today in the teenagers?
I personally, there's all the questions of the plastics and the estrogens and the pesticides, and the air quality and the food quality. But I bet that if you spoke to a woman who fed her kid only organic food and lived in the middle of a gorgeous farm, she'd probably have very similar complaints that we do about hormonal moodiness with teens. So I don't know that per se there's an increase. I think maybe it's discussed more, but I also feel that in the past we had what is called wise women wisdom, which we discussed in the beginning. This intuitive wise woman, the grandmothers, the great grandmothers, I think from my research that they would go out and pull some plants and give it to the teenagers. Unfortunately, today you can have, one set of grandparents a 6-hour flight away, another set of grandparents, on the other end of the world, and people are living very isolated. I'm in Brooklyn, New York, and people live in these little teeny boxes in apartments. So there's communication going on via social media, but not real communication like our mothers and grandmothers. I'm a grandmother now, and even if I don't see my grandkids for 2 or 3 months, I know who they are, I know their strengths, I know their weaknesses, and I go in there and I start giving them herbs, and I haven't seen them in months. So that's my intuitive connection. So I think that's what's lost.
Well, I think we've also lost just using herbs. I mean, a couple years ago, when I would just give very, very basic things about like ashwagandha, people are like, "What? What is that?" And so I think back then they did use plant-based medicine a lot more than they do now.
They had no choice. So it's very interesting. When I was in school studying herbs, we've probably discussed this before. My teacher said, look and see what medicinal plant based edibles are around your house. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in Brooklyn. We have concrete, we have cars, we have fire escapes. And in my 1 block radius, I found 10 medicinal herbs. And in the Brooklyn area, and sometimes when I'm in Los Angeles, I will do weed walks, not marijuana weed. I'll do plant-based walks, and people are amazed at what grows around them. So I think what has happened is, we know this is a pharmaceutical based medical system in America. It has its benefits for acute medicine. If God forbid someone is hit by a car, has a heart attack, please go take those meds. But we've really lost the botanical plant-based medicines, which we're going to talk about today, which is available for everybody. And every mother, father, and grandfather can learn about 3 or 4 herbs. They don't need to know hundreds like me, and they can bring them into their lives.
Well, and we should say really quick, if people haven't heard your other podcasts, I love that you're always like, go to the hospital for things. If you're having a heart attack, an herb's not going to help it, or if your bone's broken, go to the hospital and get a cast on it. But the herbs can support the healing or the pain or the inflammation after the cast has been put on.
On that note, we were in upstate New York, and my daughter, that song, "No More Monkeys Jumping on the Bed," right? Okay, so there was my daughter, my 3-year-old, jumping on the bed, and I'm trying to get all my other kids together, and I'm like, "Stop jumping! It's not even a good mattress." And you know what happened? She flew off, broke her arm. So of course I went immediately to the emergency room. We put a cast on it, and then about 6 weeks later, I went back to the doctor and I said, "I'd like to re-X-ray it," and he said, "Oh, no, 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 she's going to have a cast on all summer." And I said, "No, she's such a young girl. She needs to go out there and play in the dirt." It's the whole reason we're in upstate New York. And to make a long story short, he took an X-ray and he said, "I've never seen a break heal that quickly. Sara-Chana, I feel like I can take off the cast, but like it's not protocol." And you know what? It's because I used herbs and homeopathy. We took off the cast and she was fine. So you said it right. Go if you have an emergency, and let's heal it. So that's the same thing with herbs. So an emergency can be a teenager losing their mind, slamming the door in the bedroom. You're evil, everybody's evil, and that teenager is losing it. So we've spoken about this herb for women before. That's a time for motherwort. Motherwort herb in tincture, which we'll talk about, can help balance that hormonal I was gonna say unbalanced, but it's balanced because 'cause they're growing. It's gonna help regulate how they're responding to this hormonal flare. And if you know that this is a child that tends to get these flares of anger where there's no logic, like there's nothing you can say to them, give it to them preventatively. We don't have to wait for that attack, right? So that would be wonderful. If we see a boy or girl that's really breaking out on their face, getting back acne. So embarrassing for kids. I say go get a facial right away. Work with someone that's not going to do a glamour facial, but really knows how to clean out those pores. Give them some chaseberry. Chaseberry Vitex is an herb that can help balance their testosterone or estrogen surges. So we don't need to wait till they have a horrible breakout of acne. You see a couple outbreaks, let's jump right away. They're going to be less frustrated, less angry. And some kids get more acne than others, but let's not wait till it gets too bad.
Okay, so I have quite a few questions for you. So going back to the mother's wart. So this is for moodiness, would you say, or just purely when it's like that angry outrage? How about when
Moodiness.
they're like sad and crying also? Because I see the teenagers, one minute they're happy, the next minute they're crying, then they're mad. So for all emotions?
So, motherwort to me is for sadness, gloominess that can either just stay passive or go to rage. So I would say now, if people only wanted to try one herb, we're going to talk about lots, of course. Motherwort is kind of a fix it all for hormonal emotions that are a little out of whack. When I was first learning herbal medicine, motherwort was used for women postpartum, postpartum blues, women that are emotionally all over the place. And I had a husband, one woman sent me her husband and oh my gosh, he was complaining and everything was wrong and he was so moody. And I felt a little guilty and I gave him motherwort. And about 2 weeks later, his wife called me and said, "Oh my gosh, he's better. What'd you give him?" So I really use motherwort with boys and girls. So I think it's a really important herb for everyone to just know about and possibly start with.
Okay, so then that leads me to ask this, usually the PMS period right before a girl's cycle, so many girls become really moody, but a lot of angriness or like witchiness, right? You always hear about the PMS witchiness. So would mother's wort be the best option for that witchiness during PMS, or is there another
Yeah, so
herb?
totally. So there is a homeopathic remedy called sepia, Sepia, which is the little ballies you put under your tongue, which can sometimes really help that witchiness, which sometimes has other letters in front of it. We
Right?
know that, right? Sure. And I would want to ask them what's going on because you could mix motherwort with an herb called blue vervain. Blue vervain is a beautiful plant, and blue vervain is for that anxiety and stress that you just don't know what to do with your body. So you could mix motherwort to help stabilize the hormones and do some blue vervain for nervousness and tension. So that's a wonderful combination that I love. If someone's just crying a lot, there is a homeopathic remedy called Ignatia, Ignatia at 30C, that really helps with that sadness and that just feeling overwhelmed with sadness. But you could also add chamomile. Now, chamomile tea is something that is in almost every grocery store. You speak to great grandmothers and they're like, oh my gosh, of course we used chamomile. And chamomile is soothing and calming to the central nervous system. So if a woman's or a girl, a pre woman is crying a lot, mix some chamomile with motherwort, and that would be like a fantastic balance.
So you could just make the chamomile tea and drop a few drops from a tincture of the mother's wort into it.
Yes, so let's take 20 seconds and talk about tea versus tincture for
Okay.
those that have not heard our previous podcast. So For those of you that are watching, you can see, and then I'm going to describe it, this glass jar. It's got this fabulous little filter on the bottom, and you can pull out this little filter and fill it with herbs, add some honey and or maple syrup and hot water, and this can be your tea. So
I
teas
need
are
one of those water bottles. That's incredible.
Oh, it's incredible, and you can carry it with you everywhere you go, and when I travel, I literally bring this with me everywhere I go. I just went to India, we'll talk about that at the end, fantastic. So, you can do tea, but you can also do tincture of chamomile if the teenager's moody, grumpy, and doesn't wanna cooperate and drink a cup of tea. So, a tincture is when you take a plant, and those of you that are watching, those of you that are not, I have some roots and some flowers, and I have a powder of a plant here also, and you put the herb, well, you don't have to, it's pre-made. Nobody has to make these anymore unless they want to. You take a glass jar, you put the herb in the glass jar, you put grain alcohol or glyceride over it, let it sit for 6 to 8 weeks, and you have what is called a tincture or a liquid. So I find with teenagers, just to give them a little shot glass. I have a little shot glass here. Put a little bit of juice in there. Put your tincture of motherwort and chamomile, or motherwort and blue vein, or motherwort and chasteberry if they're breaking out. It's a lot easier for teenagers to just down the shot glass than sit down and drink a tea unless they enjoy a tea. They enjoy a tea, fantastic. We have so many herbs in tea form. But our culture is not tea based. In Japan, they have the ceremonial tea. In England, we have tea time. In America, it's like, let's drive through a Starbucks. You know what I mean? So it's
Yep.
not so common anymore in our culture.
Okay, thanks for that explanation, and that is great advice because my teenagers hate tea, like, they don't like to drink it, so a little shot of tinctures is perfect. So, okay, talking about moodiness, though, that leads me to ask you this. So, once my daughter started her cycle and I saw all her friends starting their cycles, I was amazed by what I saw. These girls were in so much pain, bleeding so heavily, they couldn't get out of bed to go to school. They were missing full days of school just because they were on their cycle. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, what is going on? And so I have a few ideas of what's going on, but what do you think's going on, and what do you have as suggestions with herbs to help this?
So the first thing I would want is girls to have a very high protein diet. And I understand the plant-based diet, sure, 100%, and we should have a billion vegetables and a billion fruits and a billion salads, not even a question. But protein is very, very, very important, and they should have protein 3 times a day. And, we have a little excess of dairy in our culture. There's, pizza and pizza with fries and so much dairy that I feel the balance is not there. Like, upping that fish is gonna make a very, very, very big difference, and I'm always surprised because when young girls that are overbleeding come into my office, they're usually low in iron and low in B12. So you would think if you're low in iron that there would be less blood, but I have always seen in my 30 some years that when we increase their iron intake, and there's a wonderful product called, can I mention it? It's called
Yep.
Floradex, and it's a natural iron. It's not constipating. You can buy it online. It's plant-based, and when we up their iron, they don't bleed or cramp as much. I also like B12. Now, I'm an herbalist and a homeopath and blah, 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 but I do like B12 injections. They work better than sublingual. It depends on what the levels are. And I find with these cramping girls that when we give them Floridex in the morning and we give them some B12 injections, you'd be surprised. The cramping is better, the bleeding is less intense, and I think we need to check our kids' iron because when you have a high dairy diet, it blocks the absorption of iron. So let's hear what's your feelings on it?
Well, Yeah, I believe their diets are playing a huge role, especially all the inflammatory oils and the sugars they're eating, and like you said, it's pizza and fries during the day and no fruits and veggies with the fiber, but I have found that if I tell the girls to take magnesium and omega-3s every day, and sometimes turmeric, but usually those 3 together are like the triple threat that just helps them so much. It calms down the cramps, calms down, their PMS, calms down all of that.
I agree. So we have a problem because our farms, they're not recomposting the soil enough. So they're just overgrowing. Thank God we have food. We can't we no one can complain about that. Even if the quality's not great, it's really hard to starve in America, thank God, right? But we are very low in magnesium because we don't have it in the soil. I agree 100%. And the good oils, you're right. It's a big problem. And the oils in dairy, although delicious, are not great when you're having these hormonal swings at all. That's the problem.
Yeah. So are there any herbs though that you recommend for these, cramps that are so terrible that they can't even get out of bed?
Of course. Like, of course. So, the herbs I love is a combination of cramp bark and black haw. These 2 herbs together work like the dynamic duo, and they help with the cramping of the uterus. So, again, I will ask my clients to increase their magnesium, but cramp bark and black haw you take at the beginning of the cramps. Like, don't wait till you're already in bed nauseous. You start with cramp bark and black haw 3 times a day. The dose typically, and we can't diagnose or treat, via podcast, but it's anywhere between 25 and 45 drops, excuse me, of the combination 3 times a day. And if the girls still need an Advil, sure, you can still take an Advil. Advil has its place, right? So you're going to take your magnesium, you're going to take your good oils. If you have turmeric, sure, great. And then you're going to also add cramp bark and black haw. Make sure your iron levels are high and your B12 levels are high. And girls are going to be able to handle their cycles much better.
Yeah, that's amazing. Are there also homeopathics that you like for cramps and PMS, things like that?
There is a homeopathic remedy called Mag Foss. Again, reminding your listeners that homeopathy are the little balls that you put under your tongue that dissolve, whereas herbs are in a liquid or a powdered form or the flowers or petals themselves. So Mag Foss I haven't seen work as well as we want to. It's for cramping. I haven't seen it be as successful as I want, and for cramps, I go straight to the herbs.
Okay, that's good to know. All right, you touched upon acne a couple times, but I'm curious because um do you think that the herb that you recommended for acne works even if the kids are like eating a really crappy diet is the way I wanna say it, a bunch of sugars and a lot of dairy, but ultra processed foods, like, is it the magic cure all or they've gotta do some of their work as well to make
Well,
these herbs help?
if I had the magic cure-all, I would not be
Be a
on this
billionaire.
podcast. I'd own some island somewhere, right?
Uh,
So, I never say the magic cure-all, but it certainly runs in families. There's certainly a genetic component. Someone will bring their child in and say, "Oh my gosh, you should have seen my face during adolescence." And then there's other girls and boys, that can eat the wrong food, do everything wrong, and have the clearest skin in the world. So that's kind of not fair. But I do see that the herb chasteberry, and sometimes for girls, if they have excess hair growth or very in oily skin, we'll add a little bit of an herb called saw palmetto, which is an herb we use for men as their prostate swells as they get older. Another show, another topic. But
right?
you add a little saw palmetto, and it helps balance because sometimes girls, when they're getting these estrogen surges, they're getting a little bit too much of that testosterone also, and that's where they get the hair growth on their face or in between on their chest or back. But magic, no, certainly a tool. And again, I'm a big advocate of getting facials. I really like these. Look, if you have blackheads, they're gonna come out. You have little whiteheads, they're gonna come out. They are going to come out. So when you do regular facials, and again, you find someone who's very competent, doesn't charge a fortune, they'll steam the face, clean out the face, and they'll give you products, and they don't have to be expensive. You have so many great products to go ahead and use. So anybody that has a propensity towards breaking out, they're going to need to do a little bit more of an intense protocol than the girl you hate that has perfect skin, right? She literally could go to bed with her makeup on, never wash her face, and never gets a pimple. And you're doing washing and masks and going getting facials and taking herbs, you're still breaking out. That's just kind of the draw of the luck and the heredity.
Or it could be their diet and lifestyle factors playing a role as well.
Absolutely, 100%. That's 100% given.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about another mood issue that I find a lot of teenagers are dealing with, and that's anxiety. And so, do you have certain herbs you like for anxiety, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, yes, anxiety, and like I always say when I'm on podcasts, like, I know this doesn't relate to 3/4 of you out there. And the truth is it relates to 3/4 of us out there. When I have clients that come in my office and they say they're anxious and nervous, I say to them, "Oh, thank God you're normal." No, no, Sara-Chana, I'm anxious and nervous. I'm like, it's a crazy world of chaos. I'm so glad you're anxious and nervous. It just means you're aware of what's going on. So could I say this generation is more anxious and nervous? Yes, I do believe that. When I started 32 years ago, there wasn't this level of anxiety. There was a little bit more stability in the homes, in the schools, in our communities, and we definitely have seen that break apart. So there's a couple herbs I love. We've discussed on your shows before. We don't have to go in depth because they can listen to the shows we've done, but I love Skullcap. And I know you
Mm.
do too. Skullcap is in the mint family. It's safe for babies and geriatrics. It's safe if you're taking medicines, although always check with an herbalist. Skullcap is for nervousness and anxiety. It can help take the edge off. But I want to introduce another herb because I always want new herbs. So there's an herb called polygala. Not popular. People don't know a lot about it. It is used a lot in Chinese medicine. And polygala, either mixed with skullcap or without skullcap, can really help that anxiety. So I carry around, and anybody that can see and people that can't see, I have a little tiny 1 ounce bottle. I keep it in my bag. Now, I take this directly under my tongue if I'm going to the airport. I'm not nervous to travel, but I could be late. Did I remember things? You know, I go, I do. I'm an adventure seeker. I'm never nervous about the adventure. I'm nervous about getting there on time. So I'll take Polygala and just drop it under my tongue. Now, my kids say no human being can take it under their tongue. It's so disgusting. So dilute it. But I happen to love Polygala. It really will take the edge off that anxiety like no other herb I've seen. It's one of my favorites. And we discussed earlier blue vervain. Blue vervain is also not a popular herb. I mean, it should be. I don't know why it's not in every pharmacy across the US. So, blue vervain, what would be the difference? So, polygala is a real panic. Like, am I going to have a panic attack? And blue vervain is, I can't cope. I'm so nervous. So,
Mm.
could you mix them together? Sure. I feel like blue vervain, they say that blue vervain gets the brain into a state of more like meditative thought, whereas polygala is, I'm going to just have a nervous breakdown as we're speaking. So you can mix the two together, and neither one are going to make you sleepy, which is what I love. Because a lot of the anti anxiety medicines out there really have the side effect of making you very lethargic. Like you can take these herbs and still drive a tractor and not worry about it.
Okay, so good to know. Let's take a quick break to hear from our show sponsor. Spring is the perfect time to jump into your annual deep cleaning, but many of the products on the market we use to clean our homes include ingredients that can contribute to chronic respiratory problems, headaches, and allergic reactions. That's why I use Branch Basics. Free of endocrine disruptors and harmful preservatives, it's safe for the whole family, even your pets. If you suffer from eczema, allergies, or asthma, or just want a great non-toxic option, make the switch to Branch Basics. Their premium starter kit provides you with everything you need to replace all of your toxic cleaning products and laundry detergent in your home. Plus, once you run out, the only thing you need to repurchase is the concentrate and oxygen boost. Save 15% on your starter kit or hand soap with code JUSTINGREDIENTS15. That's JUSTINGREDIENTS15 at branchbasics.com. Now back to the show. So as you're saying this, that you put it under your tongue, can you put all tinctures under your tongue, or you're supposed to mix tinctures in like water or juice or something?
So it's always best to mix them in a little water or juice. But depending on, you've got a high school student, and if she or he can take something that tastes a little bit gross, like why not? Then they don't have time in school or university or junior high to go get a glass, get some water. So, I might take my polygala, and for a kid, I may mix it. We've spoken about this herb before called lemon balm, which is calming and soothing. You can get a lemon balm in a glycerite, which is delicious. You can literally eat lemon balm glycerite on a spoon. So you could give a child the polygala, which is gross, true confessions here, with the lemon balm glycerite, and they may be able to put it under their tongue. So we have to think about teenagers' lifestyle. They want to be cool. They don't want to be different than everybody. They don't want to be like, hold on, I have to go take my anti-anxiety medicine. This, they can just go, no one's looking in the bathroom, boom, 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 stick it under their tongue, and nobody knows. And it's so small, they can literally keep it in their pocket. So that's how I want to do it. I want to try to give teenagers a way to take it. So very often I will take a yummy herb that may not be as effective for that anxiety and mix it with the more bitter herb.
Oh, okay, that's good to know. So back on Skullcap, yeah, I like Skullcap. I've talked about it before, but I think one of the previous shows when you taught us about Skullcap, it was more for like sort of like that rage, like when you're just like go go go, but like sort of have that rage of like, ugh, am I going to like be really mad and explode at my kids? And so I take it if I feel like that rage coming on, I take it and it just sort of calms me down. And so it's can be for that and for
And
anxiety,
anxiety,
correct?
absolutely. If a kid is anxious about a test, like one of my kids has to get an A. And it's not from me. And even when she was in school and I go to PTA, they'd say like, "Sir-Hana, like, she is so obsessed with getting A's." I'm like, and it was so funny because she'd always say to me, "Why don't I get gifts for getting A's?" I'm like, "Get a B, like, get a B, like, it's not worth her anxiety." Do you know what I'm saying? So, she did get in the honors program and got some scholarships, so I guess she was smarter than me on that one, but I'm just saying that anxiety was just too much. So you can take Skullcap before a test, before an exam, before a job interview, before a date. So you can take it at all times. You don't have to be in that pre-rage state. You can just be in that I am nervous and have butterflies in my stomach.
But moms that have like toddlers who are driving them crazy can also take it.
Oh, for sure. And they can literally have 3 bottles, 1 in their diaper bag, 1 in their stroller, 1 in their car. Maybe we need 4 bottles and 1 in your purse. Absolutely. All day long, they can take it.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, another thing that these teenagers are dealing with, but we all are, so really this is adults and teenagers, is too much stress. And they're just stressed out, like you said, about getting good grades or trying to get into college or stress of their friends and stress of life? So what do you
Yeah.
suggest for that?
So I want to mention, because I forgot to mention in the beginning, on my website, Sara-Chana.com, I do have a handout that I printed for myself of all the herbs that we're discussing. Because a lot of times people will send me messages on Instagram. I couldn't write fast enough, Sara-Chana, and I
Mm.
know. So I really took the time and went through and gave a teeny synopsis of each herb because it can be so overwhelming. So your question about stress is eat more protein, make sure you got those vegetables and you've got those fruits in your diet. And I tell my clients, 1 bite of an apple if you don't have time to eat the whole apple. 1 bite of a carrot. Like, I feel like a lot of people feel stressed to, like, really eat good meals, which would be ultimate, for
Mhm.
sure. But I always say, like, if you're running out the door, take one bite of the cucumber, one. If you can bring it in your bag, bring it in your bag. So I agree with you 100% that good food makes a very big difference. So I would say that that is super important. I mean, obviously learning to breathe and take deep breaths. My mentor was like, Sara-Chana, I want you to meditate 10 minutes a day. I'm like, 10 minutes? I said, are you kidding me? He goes, well, what do you think you can do? I'm like, one. He said, 1 minute. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. What I think would be easiest for me if I could do one inhale and one exhale every 4 hours. And he's like, okay, I take it, right? So if we can teach kids to take some deep breaths, it will also be great. But when I pulled out my paper, if you don't mind, I would love to talk about the herb rose because rose is for broken hearts, sadness and broken hearts. So, I've had clients that have come into my office before and they'll say, I remember when I was 13 and my mother got me that haircut. I'm like, you remember? They're like, yeah, I'm trying to forgive her, right?
They
And I'm like,
remember everything.
a haircut? And they're like, well, it finally grew out. I'm like, you're 47. Get over it. No, I would never say that. So, especially with teenagers, especially with social media, I didn't get enough likes. Someone who I have a crush on didn't comment. You know what I mean? So, I think rose with teenagers. Now, again, it could be rose tea, but teenagers don't like to drink a lot of tea, but rose and tinctures. So, if that student doesn't get the A and gets the C plus, which is also okay with me, we can give them some rose. If someone has a crush on someone and they don't like them back, probably for the best thing, but, we can give them some rose. And or if someone, your best friend embarrasses you in public, that happens with girls all the time. I'm always so shocked at the viciousness of girls. I mean, boys can be tough and punch people, but girls can be so catty. And girls just come home and they are sobbing. So,
Mhm.
rose is something I would also have in the house because that can really help what is really a heartache for these girls and guys.
Oh, I love that. As you're talking and saying the girls come home crying, I'm like, "Oh, I need some rose to give them." So, you just give it to them as a tincture when they come home, and then it helps them process that.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how open they are. You could give them like 22 drops every 15 minutes for 3 doses if they're really in that state of really feeling overwhelmed. And and you can give it once an hour for like 4 doses, or you could give them just 1 dose at home as they go and lock themselves in the bedroom. So with Rose, you can give it every 15 minutes, every hour, I'm repeating, every 2 to 3 hours because the heartache is real. It's so interesting because we use rose essential oil for broken blood vessels. You can add a couple drops of rose oil to any of your fantastic, creams and different products you have, and it will really help with broken blood vessels. So we see that rose really acts on the blood vessels and the heart.
Mm.
So interesting because in every hospital in the US, what do they have in their gift shop is roses to bring to patients because the visitor has a broken heart very often, the patient has a broken heart, and it's so interesting to me that roses became the number one given. Also, on Valentine's Day, when you want to show someone you love them, you give them roses. So, if you look as an herbalist as the significance of this, it's really because roses are so darn healing for our hearts. They really are. To look at them, smell them, and take them inside our body.
That is so interesting. That's fascinating. So, would you use rose, though, for stress as well, or purely just the broken heart?
You know, it's gonna come and soothe you no matter what. So it would depend on what the situation is. If it's just a hormonal surge and rage, we could give blue vervain with motherwort, right?
Right.
If it's rage from being embarrassed, then we could give motherwort with rose, right? because, nobody really rages with no reason, right? Nobody really cries with no reason. Clients will come into me and say, I just can't stop crying. There's for no reason. I'm like, human beings only cry when there's a reason. You may not have gotten to the depth of it. So, one thing they also say about taking rose, and all rose petals are edible. I don't know that I would eat them from the florist, but certainly roses out in the wild, they're all edible. But they say one thing about taking the herb rose is that it'll bring to the surface what you need to fix. So it could be for a girl that she's just in the wrong clique, right? She's trying to be in this clique. She wants to be in this clique. This is her clique, but it's not her clique because she's getting sad. She's getting enraged. She's getting moody. They never support her the way she needs to. And again, it depends on the size of the school. It's a problem. So before the interview began, I have my new book, Topia Kids, for moms and caregivers that love them. It's at the publisher. I don't know when it's coming out. It could be 6 months, 12 months, 3 months, but it will be coming out. Thank God. And we have to know also with teens, what do we need to help them fix? Sometimes they have to figure it out themselves. But if they're trying out for the football team and they're just not getting on it, it could be that that boy would be a fabulous tennis player. It's so funny because I had a girl in my office recently and she's heavy. She really struggles with weight, and her mother and father struggled with it also. So they're very panicked about this girl. So they put her in a running club. So I said, I didn't want to make the mother feel bad. And I said, that's a great idea, but I have a better idea for right now. She said, what? And I said, why don't you spend the money on tennis? She said, tennis? Why? I said, because the lessons are one on one. It adds grace into the body to do those tennis swings. She really is gonna have, hopefully, a great relationship, with her tennis teacher, and she's gonna be able to monitor her success, not against other people. Whereas if she's a heavy girl running, the little skinny girl is just gonna go faster. The one with longer legs is just gonna go faster. So sometimes we need to really, when we're thinking of herbs, we need to see, where is the fix that's gonna stop the sadness, grief, or rage with teenagers?
It's like finding the root cause of what's causing the grief or the stress or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean,
Interesting.
hormones are the root cause, don't get
Right,
me wrong,
right. Well,
but
and
then
lots of things affecting the hormones.
how's it manifesting in that child? Yes.
Well, I'm excited for your new book. So in because Moodtopia, your first one's amazing. So is
Thank
this
you.
one, do you talk about obviously the hormones and what's affecting the hormones and all the herbs that can help it?
Yes, and what I love about my book is I interviewed other herbalists and PhD aromatherapists and other very brilliant people. So when I wrote the book, it's not that I'm the expert on kids' moods. I mean, I've been doing research for so long, but in the book, I interview other herbalists and practitioners to hear their experience with kids. So when readers read my book, they're going to get my outlook on it, and then they're going to get how I interviewed other people to see, maybe you resonate more with this practitioner or that practitioner. And, I'll give you an example of one of the aromatherapists that I interviewed. She said, it just blew my mind. She said, if you have a kid that's insecure, just doesn't have that self confidence, put some of the diluted essential oil behind the back of their knees, because then they can walk more with confidence. Wow! I would have never thought of that in a million years. So she gives tips like this of where to place the essential oils so they can help not only integrate in the body, but have the body move and react in the way they need. I mean, is that amazing? How easy is that to take a teenager and put little essential oil on the back of their knees and say, go, have a good day? So these are the kind of tips that I never thought about, and I thought it was so fascinating.
That's interesting. Well, talking about insecurities and lack of confidence, that is a huge thing with teenagers. And so are there herbs that help with that?
That would be a little bit more of a homeopathic remedy. When you work with me or another homeopath, we take an hour and a half history. There are 8,500 homeopathic remedies. And if you get the right match of the homeopathic remedy, that can really help. What I like about herbs, and excuse me, I love homeopathy. I'm a classically trained homeopath. You have to be really patient with the homeopathic remedy. We may give you the one that doesn't work. So you have to be willing to come back a handful of times, which most people that are struggling will. But with herbs, it's kind of like it's always going to shift the system a little bit. It's going to shift. So insecurity again is like, are they good at a sport? Like I always feel like teenagers, and so we need to do it in the elementary school. They should be able to have one thing that they've mastered. Like, there's always going to be two or three kids that are really good in math, two or three kids that are really quick readers, two or three kids in school, that just don't have to study and get good grades. So now we have a whole different world. But when I was growing up, there was always that one kid that could do calligraphy with that funky pen, right? So that kid, even if they have a little acne, not the athlete, not the straight A student, we all used to go over and go, how do you make that F? It's so gorgeous, right? So I do feel when we're working with our younger children, our elementary school children, if we can try to make them an expert in a certain area, even if it's baking. And, once or twice a year, your one kid brings these fantastic blueberry banana muffins that are like, everyone's like, oh my gosh, I want, then that kid will boost the confidence. So there's not an herb for confidence, but there are a lot of techniques we can use to build it.
Yeah, that's just a hard parenting, challenge that you deal with, the whole time of raising kids is trying to always boost their confidence and teach them how to have confidence. So, I was just curious if there was something to support that. But I do have one more thing that I know a lot of kids deal with, well, and I should say once again, adults do, but, I'm seeing it more and more, and that is sleep. They're having a hard time going to sleep, they're having a hard time staying asleep, having a hard time getting up. Are there herbs for, sleep issues?
It's hard. There are herbs, and I actually on my list have 2 herbs listed here as you're saying that. There is an herb called passion flower, which is good for adults and children, but you can't take passion flower at, like, a quarter to 1 when you have to be asleep by 12 and you have to be up by 6:30. So with passion flower, which mixes well with lemon balm, you kinda have to take those sleep herbs, like, right after dinner and then like 2 hours later, and then before you go to bed. And for adults, you can keep a little shot glass of the herb right by your bed, so when you wake up to go to the bathroom, you can retake that shot of passion flower mixed with an herb like lemon balm, and I do talk about that, kids and sleep. I feel it's very important for kids to exercise a lot, so maybe parents can have a little trampoline if their house is small, a little trampoline under the bed, a little one, like a little rebounder. I have 5 boys in a row, as I told you, and I always had a rebounder in my house, and they'd come home and I would say, 50 jumps. 50 jumps, ma, yeah, no dinner till you get 50 jumps. And they would jump and jump and jump and get out all that tension from school, all that anxiety. And I have to tell you, when my grandkids come, I bought an even better rebounder. And the first thing I do is put it out. When they're punching each other, I'll take one of the kids separate and I'm going to go, we're going to do the jumping. And I'm like, I'll stand by them or jump first and then have them jump. So when kids work out and exercise, their body and brain really get tired. But if they're like at school intense and trying to look pretty and look good and say everything right and get good grades, and they come home and they have all this homework and they're kind of picking at their food, by the time they go to bed, their brain is just cycling and cycling and cycling. And passion flower can help with that cycle also. The brain that doesn't stop thinking and rethinking the entire day.
Oh, that is so interesting. That's really good to know. Okay, as we wrap up here, I'm wondering what advice, because being a parent obviously can be very overwhelming. Someone new into herbal medicine can be very overwhelming. So if there's a parent listening to this show that has teenagers or kids that are almost teenagers, what is your advice or your best tip for them in using herbs or yeah.
So I would say begin by following me on Instagram, Sara-Chana Sarachanas, because I try to put up little 1-minute videos or even 30-second videos on I show the herb. Hi, this is paprika. Let me tell you how to use it. Or hi, this is a root herb. If you feel like your child's kind of floating away and not able to concentrate, let's give them some root herbs. So I think that's a good place to start because I'm going to give little tips that are easy. You're going to also have your listeners get my handout. At least they can put it on their refrigerator. They can start with this. So, what I would say besides that, because real information is important. I mean, that's one of the reasons you have me on the show is because I'm not selling a product. I'm selling information, not selling information. I'm giving information so that people can be empowered. But I think that if you start with 1 or 2 herbs, don't get so many, and I think that it's important to just play around with it a little bit yourself as the parent. You're feeling stressed, take some Skullcap, see how it feels in your body. You're feeling a little bit like panicky, take some Polygala. You feel brokenhearted, take some Rose. Now, everybody responds differently. Your child may have a better response than you do, but I think as the parent, when you start to, take your little shot glass and put in a little bit of the herb and you feel confidence and you feel the taste and the smell, I feel that's going to help parents, uh, feel more comfortable to give it to their children. Like I deal with a lot of thrush, a lot of yeast infections in babies, and when I make a mix, I always say to the mom, "Taste it." She goes, "Oh, I don't want to taste it." I'm like, "No, no, no, you're going to be giving it to your child twice a day. Taste it." Does that make sense? And then when I'm making an herb for a child, when they come to me, I usually put in more than 2 herbs. I usually put in 4 to 6 herbs because people are complex, and I'll give a little bit to the parent. They're like, "Oh, no, no, no. I don't have the same issues as my child." I'm like, "Well, you do." But I wouldn't say that, and I want that parent to taste it so that they see what we're doing. So I think being a partner with trying herbs is going to help parents have that confidence. We're talking self confidence to integrate it in their children's lives.
That's good advice. So that reminded me, I get 2 questions all the time whenever I talk about herbs, and I know it's just because people aren't used to using herbs like we talked about in the beginning. This is new to a lot of people. So I always get 1, where's the best place to buy them? And 2, they always say, "Well, they intimidate me a little bit because I don't know if I'm supposed to do 1 drop, 2 drops, 10 drops, 20 drops. How do I know how much to give my child?" So, tell us on those 2 things.
So, so in my book, Topia, which is available on Amazon, I do go through the dosing. And in my new book coming out, I also go through the dosing. So most of the herbs that I'm talking about, thank God you can't really OD on them. We're not talking any herbs that have toxicity in it. And on my list and the handout on my website, there's no toxic herbs. That's number one and important. The other thing I want to let you know is that Good Company Herbs, and you carry some herbs, you have links to herbs. They have herbalists like me working for them. I don't work for a company, but an AHD herbalist. And I want everyone out there to know that good herbal companies are checking for lead, they're checking for pesticides, and the most important thing is they're making sure that the genus of the plant is correct. Because here's the most important thing. Let's say we get kava from the Philippines, and let's say the kava gets sent over to the herbalist that I work with. Well, I work with a lot of them, but let's just say Herbalist and Alchemist is one of the companies I love. If it's a bad batch, a bad meaning it's not toxic, but maybe it's too dried out, maybe it's too old, they're going to send that kava back to the person that they got it from. And that person's not going to lose money. They're going to send it to another company. So you want to make sure that the herbal company you work with has a master herbalist overseeing it because I when I get an herb in my office, by the way, I taste every herb that I get and I buy them in 32, 64 ounces. I don't make them because I live in Brooklyn and I taste it. And if it's a little off, I'll send it right back and say, I don't know what happened to this shipment. So when you find a company that you feel comfortable with, you can call, you can ask, and FDA goes in there and looks over these plants all the time. So I like herbs that are processed in America as opposed to can I say China? You know, because there's no regulation there. So I think it's important to have an American herbalist overseeing the product.
So not all herbs are created equal, so they can't just grab anything off of Amazon.
No, no. I mean, there are certain companies that I like and trust, but no, they can't just do any. I mean, if there's a company, I say take 4 minutes, call the company, and ask who's overseeing the herbs. And, at one point I was and I know you make products, so I was working with someone to formulate, and, like, I was so strict about where we got our product, and I know with your ashwagandha, I watched your clips on it, and you're very strict also. So you want someone like your strictness and my strictness to be in the processing of the herb, and that's very important. I'm glad you brought that up.
And do you, because I know people will say, "Well, what are those companies?" Do you have some companies you love? Is there a place on your
Yes.
website or
Yes, I can mention them now,
Okay.
and then anybody can email me or send me a Instagram message if you don't have a pen or you're driving now. So if you allow me to say them and I don't represent these companies, I wanna let you know. I love Wish Garden Herbs. Wish Garden is available on Amazon. The woman that formulates it is a midwife and she is an herbalist. Her products are fantastic in Colorado. I love Herb Farm, which is, I believe, in Oregon. Wonderful herbalist Ed Smith. Trust him. He's fantastic. He's never going to use a product that's not top quality. And herbalist and alchemist. David Winston, he's the master herbalist. He's one of our top teachers in the world of medicine. Brilliant. And I love his products also. I know 100% that they are 100% what they say they are. So those are the three top herbs that I use medicinally with my clients in my office. I trust them. I know they're safe, and I feel totally secure.
Okay, that was very helpful, I know, to a lot of people, so thank you for leading them at least in a certain direction. Thank you so much for being here. It is always such a pleasure talking to you. We could always go on and on about all different topics. That's why I keep having you back because we've got so many topics to cover. But once again, just tell my listeners where they can find you.
Sure, and I love it, Cara, and these your questions are great, and you're really right on the mark, and you're helping so many people out there that I really wanna compliment your work. It's
Thank you.
fantastic and needed. So anybody can visit my website, which is sarachana.com. That's SARACHANA.com. And again, there's a free handout there. It says up there just ingredients, easy to find, and then we have other handouts. People can follow me on Instagram. I try to be on top of it, putting up those little videos. Like when I'm out on the street and I see a medicinal plant, I'll get my little camera out and take it. And that's Sara-Chana S. That's Sarachanas. And my book is available on Amazon. That's Topia. And we'll be in touch when my next book comes out because we really go into the depths. We talk a lot about ADD, ADHD, inability to concentrate even without ADHD. So I know that's a topic that all moms are concerned about.
Dang, we didn't even touch upon not being able to concentrate. That's a huge one for teenagers.
Huge,
All right,
huge,
you better
huge.
just give us a little insight before
Okay,
we wrap up.
sure.
What's our
Yes, yes.
go-to for
I
that?
know. I want you to know that I had it up here on my list, but you and I go on so many important tangents. So there's a great herb called Gota Kola. Gotukola. I was just checking the spelling. Gouda Kola. It's this little adorable plant that grows very low to the ground. What I love about Gouda Kola is it calms people and adults down and helps make your focus more laser focused. So Gouda Cola is specific for brain health, and I really love Gouda Cola for kids. You can give it to little kids, medium age kids, teenagers, and us parents. So I think Gouda Cola is something that just should be included in any child who gets easily distracted. It's not going to change their personality or the way they view the world. Remember, kids that get distracted are usually the type that can laser focus on something, maybe just not the classroom. So we don't want to kill their discovery of looking around. But Gouda Kola is an herb that I think is very important for those kids.
Oh, I'm glad I asked you last minute there. Thank you for explaining that. Well, as you know, I always end my podcast with asking my guests what they have found to be the best ingredient in life, and I've now asked you this quite a few times. So, what's it going to be today?
Such a hard, and I forgot you're going to ask me that question. I would say patience. You know, I'm very busy and I'm doing 500 billion things at the same time. And sometimes people around us don't have that quick of a mind or juggling 55 million things. So I'm really working on taking a second and actually listening because my brain's already 5 steps ahead. So I think having patience with people's process around us is a very important tool, I think, for everybody right now in our fast culture.
I love that because if we all had patience, I mean, the rage would come down. We would be more kind and happy. And yeah, there's lots of things that revolve around patience. So I love that last little thought. Well, again, thank you so much for being here. I know how extremely busy you are, but you have been so great to my Just Ingredient followers and listeners, always providing resources for them. And so if you guys don't follow Sara-Chana, go follow her and check out her website because, like she said, she has these worksheets that are just so great that just tell you the herbs and what they help with. And you've been a great resource to my community. So thank you, Sara-Chana.
Thank you for having me be part of it because your work is fantastic. Thank you
Thank
again.
you. Thank you so much for listening. Remember to subscribe to the Just Ingredients podcast to learn more about your health and good ingredients to life. Plus, get daily tips at just.ingredients on Instagram.